who are not for this for obvious reasons. What I'm saying, as a practical matter, what do we do? And I take everything that you said as true for purposes of this question. But what can we do, or what can be done to educate the public and actually get a discussion?
Before I answer that directly, maybe I'll turn that over first to John Avlon. Victor, are you still on the phone?
Yes, I am. Thank you, Dick. I appreciate the question, and it's an important one. The first thing I think we're seeing, yes, there is an uptick in independent voters in New York City, New York State, and indeed across the nation. But in examining 2003, I think the right way to analyze that election, the important way to analyze that election, was to consider the election cycle in which it was put forward. Because that low turnout election cycle, where only city council races and a handful of city council races that were on the ballot, was dominated because of the low turnout by the kind of actors who have a real investment in a closed partisan process. You yourself said, framing the question, that unions would oppose this reform for obvious reasons. Well, the obvious reasons I believe you were alluding to is that interest groups who are overwhelmingly affiliated with the Democratic Party, for better or for worse, have an interest in this low turnout closed election because their impact will be greater. They have less interest in an open process. And in 2003, we saw a low turnout election with very few races on the ballot to compel high general election turnout. And that, I would argue, and have argued, was the #1 factor responsible for the election's defeat. If you look historically in New York City, over 70% of ballot referendum items passed. They are more likely to pass in high turnout elections that more accurately reflect the general election. Low turnout elections don't adequately reflect the general election. So, in addition to the dysfunction we have seen in Albany in recent years, which I think has made an impression, an increasing impression on many, if not most, New Yorkers, a sense of frustration with the hyperpartisanship we're seeing in national politics. All these things have, I think, increased the appetite for a top-2 election system in an open process. But the biggest factor by far in my judgment, if you want to ask why now rather than 2003, to look at the cycle. In a low turnout election, a non-representative sample of voters turned out. In a more representative high turnout general election, such as one where governors and senators won the ballot, or presidential election, I think you would find a very different result.
In 2003,